Jason Carter, man, it's so great to see you. Thanks for making time for us over here.
Man, thanks for having me on your show.
And I've been looking forward to this for a while. And I mean, we have in the house 6-time IBMA Fiddler of the Year. Is that fair to say? Is that accurate? Did I get the number of times right? Not that this matters. I'm
not sure.
I'm just singing your praises for a second to the uninitiated, so they know with what authority you speak. And a long time is an understatement. Member of the Del McCoury Band, 33 years.
33 years,
yeah. Man, what a legacy.
Yeah, man.
And so I'm really excited to talk with you. And I've been thinking about kind of the angle to take. And the audience, I think, of the podcast is not like exactly bluegrass specific, but kind of, bluegrass-ish, adjacent, and curious. And so I'm thinking about framing this maybe in the context, and we're going to go a bunch of different places. I have some ideas. But in the context of a person finding his way through his career and his passion. And I think that when I think of you, I think of you as like being a really self-directed person. Do you think that's fair to say, first of all?
I guess so.
Maybe at least initially.
Yeah.
Because, okay, and I say this because it's not like you were playing fiddle when you were 6. As I understand it, you kind of caught the bug seeing Del at like 16.
Yeah.
Right. You're well on into the adolescence.
Right.
And so at that point, you're like, I got to do this. And you did. And you were like gigging 2 years later at, with some reputable names. Am I right here?
Yeah,
I did some research. Okay.
Yeah,
I want you to call me out if I get it wrong.
Yeah, that's about it, man.
All right. Well, let's start there. So like what, maybe you could explain a little bit of your background in music. Was your a musical family?
Yeah, man. My dad played in a band back there in Eastern Kentucky. They were called the Buffalo Creek Express when I was a little kid.
Nice.
This would have been in the early or late 70s, I guess. And we would go watch him play. But anyway, I guess how I started playing guitar. My dad started me off. But there was a guy that came to our house. His name was Mike Parsons. And he came over, and he had his son who was a little bit older than me, a couple years older. And he was telling my dad, he said, I want you to hear my son play the guitar. And so we were sitting there, and his son plays House of the Rising Sun on the guitar, and they were really bragging on him, and I was blown away. I was like, I couldn't believe that this kid was doing this. And when they left, I asked my dad, I said, can you show me how to do that? And he's like, oh yeah. And so he showed me House of the Rising Sun. That was the first song.
The chords, or just like to pick it out, or okay.
Like there's just the chords to be able to play the rhythm through that. And that's what started me off,
How old were you? How old were you?
I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
did you take to it quick? I mean, like it's kind of hard to learn how to chord,
Once I think I figured it out pretty quick. I mean, Dad was showing me everything. So,
yeah.
But yeah, and that's all after, from that first time, that's like, I was so focused, man. That's just what I wanted to do. You couldn't take that guitar out of my hands unless there was a ball game.
True story though. Yeah. I mean, like you really that passionate about it as a kid?
Oh, I loved it, man.
Were your parents, so your parents were musical, obviously. And did you like go to bluegrass festivals? Was there a community around you? Okay.
Yeah. And at that time, my dad was still playing them, and he would go to jam sessions, and he would play some local shows, and we would go out and watch him play. And I don't know how old I was. I hadn't been playing long, but I learned how to play solo on a couple songs. And I remember he got me on stage, and what I remember, I was pretty young, man. I was pretty young, but he got me on stage, and he asked me, I said, how you feeling? I said, my stomach really hurts. I don't know what's going on. I'm scared to death.
Yeah.
And anyway, he said, you want to practice? And I was like, yeah. And I turned around, turned my back, and he's like, no, man, come on. And we played the song. And when we got done, I was walking off stage, and there was 2 girls came up, and they gave me a kiss on the cheek, and I thought, boy, this is going to be all right.
Man, people,
that's really what happened.
dude, I'm
I
not
couldn't
going to
have been 10 years old, you know.
Man, people underestimate the power of a young man getting kissed on the cheek by a cute girl. I absolutely have the same version, my version of that story, which led me to this life of wandering misery that I find myself in now. Because of that early experience, you're like, oh, there's power in this. Power is untold. That's amazing. And so that was an early experience and a positive one, right? Like as you're saying, and that's, I think, so much of what kind of kicks you off on the right foot going down this path. Did you start learning any fiddle tunes, flat picking when you're playing guitar?
Oh yeah. Man, I was like I love Tony Rice.
Sure.
So after my dad showed me a couple tunes, I started going through the records and I found all these Tony Rice records and I was blown away. And I would sit by the stereo and try to back it up, and learn the tunes.
On the cassette?
No, on vinyl.
On vinyl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty good about moving the needle back. Probably scratched up a bunch of records.
Yeah, I bet your dad's got a thing to say about that.
Yeah, right. But man, that's what I loved. I loved Tony Rice. Mm-hmm. Tried to play anything that was my when I heard him. That was.
What's a favorite record or one that comes to mind?
Oh, all of them. Yeah, Manzanita. Guitar was the first one that I think it had Doing My Time, and the kickoff on Doing My Time was like I spent hours trying to learn that. I still don't know it. Not like he did.
So you were, I mean, at least proficient, especially for a kid, on guitar. And I would think that it would take a lot to kind of jog a person out of one groove into another. So can you, I don't know if you can put some words to that, but like, what was it that made you go like, yeah, man, I think I got to do this fiddle thing?
Oh man, that's pretty simple. So I played guitar and mandolin. My dad played mandolin, so he'd show me some stuff on that too. And so that went on for until I was around 15, and I heard Del McCoury on this show, Take Me to the Mountains. It was a TV show. We had a local jam that we'd go to every week, and this guy would give me bluegrass tapes and VCR tapes, and he gave me a VCR tape of this, and it had Del McCoury on there. Man, when I heard this, I was like, whoa, that's cool. This is really cool. And it was I think what drew me to it was the guitar. It was definitely his singing and his guitar playing. His rhythm was is still the best. And so I would sit and play guitar along with that videotape. And then I bought some records. We had to drive it was like a half an hour drive to there was a record store up there in Grayson, Kentucky. I think it was Grayson. Anyway, we'd go there, and that's the only place you could find bluegrass. And I remember I wound up getting some Del McCoury records, and I'd play guitar and sometimes mandolin, just jamming in my bedroom, trying to figure out these tunes. And of course, at that time, people would ask, what are you going to do when you get out of school? And I was like, I'm going to play with Del McCoury, man. That's what I'm going to do. And I guess I was saying that so much that my dad finally said, son, Del plays guitar. And he said, I think his sons play banjo and mandolin. He said, so if you really want a job in that band, you're going to have to learn to play fiddle or bass. We had a fiddle at home. And so I started playing fiddle. And it noted the same as the mandolin, so I knew some of the left-hand stuff. And my dad kind of started me off on the fiddle, and then I started trying to figure out the fiddle breaks on the Del McCoury records, the same as I tried to learn the Tony Rice breaks on the guitar.
Yeah.
Same as everybody
the
does,
the ear was there.
Yeah. But
that's amazing, man. Well, this is what I'm talking about. This is the self-directed thing. You're like, this as you understood, it's this crazy idea that you were going to play with Del McCoury. Yeah. And your dad's like, son.
Man, and that's just, that's I was determined I was going to play music. I didn't know how it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And at the time, I never thought about it, you know?
Yeah.
And so like when I graduated high school, it was like this dose of reality hit. And it's like, oh, they live in Pennsylvania. I'm here in Kentucky. How is this ever going to work out? I don't even know how to get in touch with these guys. And they already have a band. And it's like, so I started going to vocational school to be a draftsman. And I wound up going for like 3 semesters. And I wound up getting a job with a local, it was a professional band, the Goins Brothers from Eastern Kentucky. And that was right out of high school. Like right around the same time I started the vocational school. And we toured mainly east of the Mississippi, up to New York and southeast. Anyway, I was with them for 6 months, and we wound up going to come to Nashville for the SPIGMA convention, Bluegrass convention festival.
I've been many times.
Yeah. All right. So this would have been February 92, 1st February. It's my birthday. Me and Dale both have the same birthday, February 1st. But so that festival went on around my birthday, and I was there with the Goins Brothers, and Dale was there. And I'd seen them at the different festivals, and I got to talk to their band, and their fiddle player's name was Tad Marks. And Tad knew that I wanted his job. He knew that I was a huge fan, and that's kind of what I wanted to, well, that's what I wanted to do. And he knew that. I don't know how that conversation ever came about, but he knew it. Anyway.
Probably everyone knew it.
Yeah, I think so. I think I still talked about them so much. You know, I was such a fan. I was such a fan of the Dale McCoury Band. I still have the old briefcase that I had in my drafting classes, and I would make logos of the Dale McCoury Band, and they're like in my
so good
written inside of my briefcase. You know, it's crazy. Anyway, Tad came to me at that festival, and he said, "Hey man, I know you wanting this job." He said, "The McCourys are moving to Nashville, and I'm not making the move, so I'm leaving the band. This job's coming open. You should go talk to Dale." I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So I found Dale, and I was like, "Hey man, I want to be in your band. I want to play fiddle for you." You know?
Were you nervous to talk to him?
Yeah.
Had you ever talked to him before? Yeah.
I don't. I probably talked to him, at like a bluegrass festival somewhere. I'm sure he didn't know who I was. And he'd never heard me play until I got to come to Nashville. But anyway, I gave him my number, and after I gave him my number, he came through the dressing room where we were at, and I was playing Art Stamper's fiddle, this legendary bluegrass fiddle player's fiddle. He was showing it to me, and so I'm playing it, and I've only played a couple years. I'm not very good anyway, and I'm playing a strange fiddle, and Dale McCoury walks by, and I thought, boy, that's the end of my chances of playing, because he heard me playing on this strange fiddle. Anyway, he never thought anything of it. He probably never even glanced over. I don't know, but anyway, 2 weeks later, he calls my home, and I answer the phone, and I hear this voice on the other end, and it's Dale McCoury. And I'm like nervous, super nervous. And he said, "You're the first person to ask for the job, so you're the first one that gets to try out if you want to." He said, "We're going to play Station Inn in Nashville, and in West Memphis, Arkansas, and Garland, Texas." He said, "You can come down and go on this trip with me if you want and try out." Absolutely,
Yeah.
So I came to Nashville and got to his house. He was just moving in he had a house in Millersville. So we pulled in there. I think I went to Ronnie's house the night before, and me and him picked a few tunes.
His son, Ronnie.
Yeah. And so we were going to get together and rehearse. And this is how I was so green, man. I was so green. But I remember he said, he told me, he said, I need to go out and pay the water bill, and I'll come back, and the boys ought to be here at that time, and we'll rehearse, run over some songs with you. And the only thing I could think of was, what kind of world do we live in where Del McCoury has to pay a water bill. This is
God pays his own water bill?
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what it was like for me.
Wow, what a world.
I never thought about anything like that, but it was like, they really make Del McCoury pay for his own water? That's great, how green I was. Anyway, we went on the trip. I played the shows. We rehearsed, and I knew all the stuff to the best of my ability. I knew the stuff. I knew the kickoffs and all this, and he told me afterwards. He said, "Man, it's really good that you." After we rehearsed, he said, "It's really good of you that you learn these songs."
Little did he know.
And I thought, who would ever come to try out for you that wouldn't know your material? I've been working on this stuff all my life, so it's like, who would in their right mind would do something like that?
Dude, this is a beautiful story. And, in some ways you were born to be Del's fiddler. It was destined.
That's what I wanted to do.
It was written in the book years before.
Right. And, man, I just couldn't believe that people would come to play with you and you wouldn't know their songs, because, man, that's what I lived it, man.
Yeah.
But
that's
now,
great.
now looking at things, I know how things kind of work a little better. People don't have time sometimes to do that. They can learn some things, but everybody has different things going on, and they might not have time to learn everything before the first gig.
Yeah.
So
anyway, not you, not then.
Yeah. We came back off of that tour, the 3-day trip, and anyway, we dropped off Ronnie and they went inside and I was kind of left on the bus. They were going to talk things over, so I'm like, nervous. And then they come back on the bus, and then I kind of learned that Ronnie has a sense of humor. And he come back out and he said, "Well, we're trying out people, and I was like, I didn't get the job, and he said, if you want the gig, it's yours." I was blown away.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never was there a happier Jason Carter.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
How old were you then?
I was 19.
Dang.
Yeah. 19
Dude,
years
that's
old.
so great. And so this was a gig. One of the things about Del McCoury Band is that for the longest time, it was really unchanged personnel wise.
Yeah,
this is like unprecedented.
I don't know how long Mike was there.
Oh, that's right.
Mike Bubb was the bass player for 13 years, maybe 14 years, something like that.
He was there when I saw y'all at the Columbia Gorge
Right.
Festival. He was still playing with you.
Right. And then Alan Bartram joined the band, and he's been there ever since. That was the only change in the band. Yeah.
Is it the longest running band in Bluegrass?
Oh, I don't know.
I think maybe.
Maybe maybe so. Maybe
yeah.
I
there's
know.
other long running bands, but there's a lot.
That Flatt and Scruggs band was a long time, I think, but I don't know. I don't know if it would have went that long.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it would not have. I don't think it would have been that long.
How? Okay.
There's no way, because they broke up in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
30 years, 33 years, pretty hard run to break, I think.
Yeah, I think Barry Bells has been with Alison Krauss for longer than that. But they've taken years off or taken seasons off, and like we never did with Del. It was all year.
Yeah.
All year long, every year.
Working band.
Yeah.
Stuart
Duncan was like the Nashville Bluegrass Band for the longer than. They haven't done anything in a long time, but I would still consider him a member of the Nashville Bluegrass Band. It's his band.
Did Stuart was he a founding member of the Nashville Bluegrass Band?
You know what? I think Blaine Sprouse actually played on the first record, and then Stuart played on the next, and he was there. So, but there's been a few,
Yeah, I wonder if you. I have a suspicion, Jason, that you're one of these cats that you sort of get better kind of through osmosis. But let's try an experiment anyway. And maybe you could talk a little bit about your approach to learning how to play. It's one thing to learn the licks off the records. that in some ways, it's not like everyone can do that, but that's a thing that's obvious to do, you know, like when you're starting out, like, wow. Like there was a Brian Sutton guitar solo on this cut he did called Katie Hill, a famous song with Kenny Baker. I can't find the record anymore. It was like on some kind of compilation. It doesn't exist anymore. But there's this, and I've tried for so long to learn how to play it. Anyway, I could, but that was just like a target. You know what I mean? But as far as like improvising, how were you able to sort of reassemble the little fragments that you'd learned and the little licks and the tidbits into, you know, your own thing?
Man, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I think everybody kind of, while you're learning, you kind of create like have an arsenal of licks, things that you play, things that you're able to play. Dale always, you know, stressed to me to play the melody of the song. And that's the first thing I think about whenever I'm, you know, when you're trying to learn something is play the song. My favorite fiddle players, man, like, Bobby Hicks was one of the guys, and Kenny Baker, and they played the song. They didn't, I mean, they would vary a little bit from the melody. Stuart Duncan is another great example of that. I mean, that guy, his interpretation of the melody is wonderful, and how he plays they all play the song, you know, that's where it all starts. But anyway, as far as improvising too, I think you just have it, you kind of you have your arsenal of licks, you know, that is to me, you know, I mean, there's very little, I think, of the stuff that I play, maybe a little bit more now would be made up on the spot, but it's like you're listening to the melody, and it's like you're trying to get in and out of that. And it's, sometimes things happen by accident, you know. We
were talking before the mics were on about, you know, playing and the idea of playing what you know and it being all perfect versus just like putting yourself out there. And you started this by saying, like, we were setting up, and you were like, well, I know I'm going to make mistakes, you know, I just know in advance. And then you were like, I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
And that's not everyone's feeling about music, you know, but I think that's the correct feeling. I think that there's so many stories time and again of musicians sort of learning eventually, even really, really great musicians, audiences aren't paying to like watch you kind of work through your perfectly trained system of tricks and whatnot. They're looking for passion in art, and, you know, I don't know, say something about that. I feel like you got a little of that in you.
I don't know. I think that comes from working with Dale, you know, and in those early days, man, I tried to learn everything exactly like what was on the record. And that's the only way I could play it. I did. If you had told me to play it different, I wouldn't have known how at that time. I just didn't have the ability. And you know, we'd come off stage, and I would be like, oh man, I messed this up, and I messed this song up. And Dale wouldn't say anything, you know. He'd be like, well, I messed up on this one, I messed up on that one. It's all right, you know. And
did you have fun?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. And he would always stress, he said, you don't have to play it like what's on that record. You could play however you want, you know. And I thought, I don't know how to do that, you know.
What do you mean, however I want?
Yeah, right. But, you know, he helped me out. Years ago, he would drive the bus, and I would ride through the night, ride shotgun with him. And I would play fiddle up there, and I would work on trying to figure out different ways to play certain solos, you know. And I would ask him, and he would always say, you don't have to play it like this, but you could try, if you wanted to play like this, you could try doing this. And he'd sing a melody to me, and I'd try to play it back to him. And I think that's part of, I don't know, anything that he would sing would be kind of bluesy too. And I loved that.
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of what I heard in the people back home in Eastern Kentucky that I tried to play like, you know, it was pretty bluesy stuff. But anyway, Dale he would sing stuff to me.
I love that he prefaced it by saying, you don't have to do it like this.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
if you're, here's a thought.
Yeah, right,
Just,
right.
speaks to his graciousness.
I think he was just trying to give me trying to show me a different way to do something, a different way to play, because he knew that I'm sure that he knew that I was only, this is all I could do at the time.
But he also recognized that you obviously had a great ear and that you were hungry as all get out.
Man,
so you were going to do whatever he wanted you to do.
Right.
As quick as possible.
Yeah, right.
I wonder if we could talk for a second about, and I don't really know how to get into this, but just thinking about, young people when they've got stars in their eyes, and your version's going to be your version, but I'm interested in your version. They're like, I'm going to be Del's fiddler, and that was the whole dream realized. But you were 19 when you realized this lifelong dream, and there's a lot of life to come after that. And, how did you negotiate? Was there ever like a disillusionment, or I feel like here's the thing is I feel like in every artist's life, even if they're successful enough to become full-time, which is very few people, and what an amazing thing, at some point along the way, you're like, oh, I guess this is just kind of my life. There's a little bit of a job that creeps into it. You're like, I guess I don't know if I want to show up at the bus at 4:00 in the morning this weekend, but I'm gonna, because this is my job. Did you ever, I don't know, was it a little, I don't even know what I'm trying to ask exactly, but there's just something different about doing something for the very first time and doing something for the 500th time.
Man, with that band, it all got to be like a well-oiled machine. We all knew what to do. We knew everything. I mean, it was a lot of things you wouldn't even have to say to do. But man, it never got old to me. Mm-hmm. It's like, it wasn't my favorite thing to play the Vincent every night, that song, his hit song,
52
Vincent. Yeah.
I learned, that was part of my song that I did with my Bluegrass band when I was coming up off that record. I watched you guys do it at the Columbia Gorge. I learned it myself. I do it the same way.
But I could, and on the last shows that we played, I was still like, I was trying to figure out some new things to play on it just to make it a little different. But things didn't get old, man.
Yeah.
The last little run of shows I did with Del was in DC, and we did like 5 nights, and we did like songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And there was some moments, man, of standing up there and just watching him. Man, I still had that feeling, it's like of being 19 and watching him play and sing. And it was amazing. And I knew I was leaving the band. At that time, I knew I was this could be I'd kind of told them I was going to be going, but we hadn't talked about what my last date was. And it just happened to be them. And I knew it could have been, but man, it was just like, even doing those gigs, man, he sung stuff on those shows that I'd never heard him do. And just like, and I mean, like singing things, like I've heard him sing these songs, but he did it a little different. Mm-hmm. And it was just like blew me away, man. And so it's like, and his playing and singing at 86 is as strong as ever. Mm-hmm. Man, he is so good. So good. And to stand up there, people don't understand what that's like because they haven't done it. But to stand beside that guy, it's a force. Mm-hmm. And everybody in that band, every one of those guys, there's nobody that can play like Rob McCoury on banjo. Man, that guy's got a sound, and it's like you take him away, and it just really changes everything. Those guys are all a force on their instruments and how they play. I never got tired of it, man.
Yeah.
Never.
What made you leave? I mean, have you talked about this before?
Yeah, no, well, maybe just like recently on some interviews or whatever. But man, what made me leave was I wanted to front my own band. Mm-hmm. That's basically it. I did a solo record a couple years ago, and I got to do a few shows, and it was very hard to be able to schedule my own shows around. I played with two really successful bands in the Del McCoury Band and the Travelin McCourys. And it was hard to get my schedule in enough notice where I could book my own shows, you know? And that was really hard, you know, and I was wanting to do more, and I wasn't able to do that. And then I started thinking, you know, it's like Del was my age whenever I joined the band with him. It's like,
wow,
I don't
That's
know. I
crazy
think
to
when I hit 50, you know, a couple of years ago, you think, man, is it all downhill from here, you know? And I started thinking about Del. It's like, you know, he was like 52 or 53 when I joined his band, maybe 53.
That's incredible. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and he's had an incredible career in the time that I've been there. And I was like, man, maybe there's time for me. You know, I've done this now, and it's like, I don't want to leave, but I feel like I might have a little momentum going with the records that I'm putting out, like my solo record. I've got a record out with my friend Michael Cleveland, and we're wanting to tour. We're wanting to do our own shows with this. And it's like, I love playing with Del more than anything, but it's like, I think what I really want to do in the future is front my own band and do my own shows. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can. I don't know if it'll be successful. Yeah. I hope it is. I'm going to work hard to do it. But that's what, if I don't, I kind of thought, well, if I don't just go head first and do this, it's not going to work. I'm not going to stand a chance to be successful. Mm-hmm. So I went and had the hard talk with Del and told him I was putting in my notice, you know, which I never thought I was going to do.
I want to talk about that, but how long had that been percolating before you kind of finally took action?
I'd thought about it for a while, and I kept thinking, you know, it's like, well, maybe I can make all of it work out. Maybe I can still make it work. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't care if I just go play clubs with my own band for right now. I don't mind.
Yeah.
And then it's like you have to book that stuff so far out that it's like, you know, I can't ask Del McCoury and the rest of the band to hold their schedule so I can go play a club date. Yeah. You know, and then us not take a date, and then if I do, I have to get a sub for me because I got these other shows booked. That's not right. That's not doing them right. You know, so it's like
it's got to be all or nothing.
It's got to be all or nothing, and so I did, man.
So did you talk to Del?
Yeah.
That's another time I bet you were pretty nervous.
Yeah, I was. I was. But I kind of knew he's an understanding guy, mm-hmm. and I knew that he could understand exactly where I'm at in my life. He's lived it. You know, he's been there. He worked for his hero, Bill Monroe, you know, only for a year. And I know that he didn't really want to leave that job, I don't think. You know, I've heard him talk about it, but there's probably part of him that did want to branch out, but I don't know. You would have to ask him for sure, but I'm sure that he wished he would have stayed there a little longer, maybe than a year.
Yeah.
You know.
So there you did it. You did it, and then you started making your own. You started heading your own projects.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And, that's a whole nother deal, as we talked about.
Goodness, yeah.
And probably you didn't know exactly what it was going to be until you were there. And then it was too late. You're out of work.
Man.
That's been like, what, 2 years now that you've been going? 3 years?
Man, actually, well, I've been doing shows for, maybe that amount of time, but I just left Del this year in January.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh geez.
Yes. So the last shows I did was, it's funny. The last show I did was on my birthday with the Travelin McCourys.
Wow.
February 1st in
and his
Vermont.
Birthday too?
And Del's birthday was February 1st. Yeah. The last Del shows I did was that Washington DC run. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is pretty brand new.
So it's brand new.
Chapter.
So yeah. So I left the band at that time, and you know, it's like a lot of the festivals, early summer festivals were already booked up. So, you know, I've been kind of keeping my schedule. I've been doing some shows, Jason Carter Band shows, and then I recorded with a band called Leftover Salmon. So
sure.
I love those guys. I've known them for years, and I've been going out on the road with those guys a little bit this year, and they've gave me some work. I'm going out real soon with the Yonder Mountain String Band. I've done lots of work with those guys and several other different bands that I've got some gigs booked with.
That's got to be interesting in itself to be kind of a hired gun for a second.
And it's, you know what, I'm really enjoying it. I don't really have any regrets. I really don't. I didn't really want to leave the job with Dell, but I knew it's kind of, everything was kind of leading me to do that. And I don't regret it right now.
Well, you're on an adventure.
Yeah, right.
You knew what your life was going to look like if you stayed with Dell, as good as it was.
Right.
But you knew what it was going to be. And you don't know what this is. This is exciting, man.
It's very exciting because it's like, you go out and you play with these other guys, and it's not like, it's like sometimes if we played with Dell and the sound wasn't the greatest, you could kind of go on autopilot a little bit,
Uh-huh.
And man, it's really it keeps me on my toes.
Mm-hmm.
To be out there playing with some other bands.
Yeah, absolutely.
And fronting my own band. It's a different ball game, man. It's a huge difference than just standing up there playing fiddle in the same gig that you've been doing all your life, that you've worked your whole life for.
Absolutely.
It's a different ball game.
You're being tested.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And not only do you have to, pick the songs and pick the band and run the show, but you've got to make, create your vision for yourself, which is a very subtle art,
Right.
and like,
and
have you given thought to it that way, or how do you see yourself going forward? What sets Jason Carter Experience apart from all the other great fiddlers out there, as far as like, hanging your shingle out and booking festivals?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah. Well, cool. I won't test you on it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just excited to see what comes. I'm excited to see what happens with, even right now. It's so funny. It's like I left my dream job, and I don't have a band. I don't have any. Didn't have any gigs, like a handful, and my band has been a rotating band because it's just getting off the ground, so
for sure.
So I don't really know what's to come.
Yeah, some would say you were just a damn sorry fool for leaving such a good thing behind.
Right. Yeah.
And they would be right in some ways,
absolutely,
right? But
absolutely.
You got to do this thing.
Man, I think so, man. I think sometimes you got to go with the way you're getting pulled.
I think that one of the things that I just feel really encouraged by is you pointing out that Dell was as old as, roughly you are now when he met you for the first time as 19 years old, and that he's had such a fantastic career afterwards. And that just gives all of us hope who aren't, in our 20s or 30s,
right,
or maybe even 40s anymore, and that there is plenty of life to be led. I think that's a challenge that a lot of people have as they get older, that you see a little less road out in front of you, and it makes you scared, or it makes you want to be cautious, or it makes you want to just like hold on to what you got, instead of strike out for the unknown, because it does hurt a lot. It hurts a bit more when you're, I think, not when you're spry and green, you can take a lot of licks, but it gets hard. But you find out that you can take licks your whole life. It's like, it's a skill. It's a necessary part of probably growing. But yeah, I just, as somebody that has, done some version of the creative life my whole life, I never got to play with the Del McCoury Band, or I've had my little moments, and I'm still in there, man, cranking every day, trying to figure this whole thing out. And so it's encouraging for me to not only hear like stories of Del doing this, but just seeing you, by example, you're striking out.
Man, I feel lucky that I was, in so many ways, that I got to work with that band and to watch Del and see, see how hard he worked, you know, and know that that's what you have to do to make it work. Also, just like, man, he's so open-minded to everything, you know, and that's kind of, I think that's a great thing to keep in mind, you know, anything like music related, especially, you know, he would try anything, working up a song or any direction. He was not afraid to go. He stayed true to himself, but he was always willing to experiment musically, you know.
I remember that show I saw. Sorry to interrupt. The show I saw, caught of y'all's at the Columbia Gorge. Just to this point, there was a bit in the show where you were singing like a big 4-part moment, and then everybody just like physically stepped away from the mic.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is like maybe you've done it 1,000 times and like, who cares? But for this young kid seeing this for the first time, it was just like, oh wow. There's no rules.
Yeah,
not even in bluegrass music, which is just like strictly acoustic instruments. Just you guys, I think you did that show around the one mic. But it's like, what can you do in those constraints? That like was really. I remember it all these years later.
That's
so
cool,
that's a testament to his open-mindedness. Maybe I don't know if he came up with it, but he certainly allowed it to happen, and it was cool.
Right.
Added a lot.
Yeah.
And, yeah, dude, that's really great. So I noticed that you have a relationship with the social media. You're out there working it, and has that been different since now that you're running it? Do you have to think about that differently? Do you have help with it, or?
Of course, my wife Bronwyn would definitely has helped me out. She with everything that I do in life, she helps me out. But
amazing find there. Well done, sir.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, I just try to stay active on social media. You know, I think it's important for what we're doing, you know. Yeah, man. And it's what a way to free publicity kind of, you know, and it gets you out to, it has potential to, you have potential to reach thousands of people every day with that, you know.
Do you feel pretty overwhelmed by it ever? Or do you, it seems like you have a pretty good handle on it.
You know, a little bit. You know.
I ask this because everybody has to deal with it.
Yeah. I'm old, so yeah. It's like it can be a little overwhelming. I don't know what to do, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think you do fine. I've just watched you, talk up your shows and everything. And it's just like, and you're also talking to people who already, I think a lot of times, especially on Instagram and stuff, you're talking to people who already are like you, they're interested in advance. And I think that's one of the things that's nice about the social media deal. I don't, I have a love-hate relationship with it, I think, as most people do, but, your audience is kind of yours going forward, unless the platform disappears or something. Right. But whoever followed you on Instagram or whatever, they did because they wanted to know what's going on in your life. And so that's also a little encouraging in some ways to be like, sometimes I can feel stupid talking into my phone, for instance, about whatever it is that I want people to know about. Right. But I have to remind myself that, like, it's fine.
It kind of feels silly, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah.
But
hey, man, it's like, man, I wonder what the Del McCoury Band would have been like, if this would have been around in 1992. Yeah.
It'll look.
And while we were doing all the, playing Bonnaroo and a show with Fish and Steve, touring with Steve Earle and doing all that stuff. Man, to have all that stuff on social media, I wonder what would have happened. I wonder how it would have blown up, if it would have blown up bigger than,
some of those. Yeah, it's interesting because like some of those moments are maybe the more precious because they were harder to capture. I just remember there's a moment of during the mountain it was backstage at the Tonight Show or something during that record, and Steve Earle was playing with y'all. Yeah. And I think that you were playing backstage, but not like in the green room, but just off backstage, and just like you were just rehearsing, playing together, and somebody like let the camera roll, and it's just like a glimpse of, a time gone And,
Right.
but nowadays it's like, God, everything's recorded all the time. And so in some ways, nothing special
Right.
or as special, you know, because it's so common. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to look back and see what sticks in this area. I'm sorry, you're about to say something.
Oh no, you were just talking about that, but like capturing something on video. I just saw somebody just sent me a show of a YouTube, and it was me with Dell on my tryout weekend in West Memphis, Arkansas.
Wow. Camcorder, probably over the shoulder
Probably
style.
so, yeah, probably so, yeah. But it's on YouTube. Del McCoury Band, and it's February '92 in. It either says Memphis or in Arkansas. Or
Pretty easy to
something.
find. I think your name 92.
Yeah, or Del McCoury Band.
And Del's name.
I don't know if it would have my name on it or not, but that's pretty cool for me to see, to have that, you know.
It's all digital, glitchy and stuff, like old school VHS style. Yeah. That's great, man. Yeah. You didn't even have to put the VHS plug-in back in the days. It just did it for you. Maybe on that note, we've been talking about the way forward and what's coming up, and maybe you could indulge us by playing one in the studio.
Sure.
Is this a song that you wrote?
No, this was written by Sean Camp.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, he's great.
Man, I've had a lot of the songs that was on my record. I did a record called Low Down, Hoedown, and a lot of those songs, I've had them, like, I knew that I wanted to record them for a long time, but I've just never recorded. And this is one of the ones. I know I had got a demo from Sean years ago, and there's several songs on it. This is one of the songs that was on the demo, and no one ever recorded this one that I'm aware of. Queen of Nashville Nights.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
She rules Music City like she used to rule my heart. She steps out of the limo when the paparazzi starts. She flashes the cameras left and right. She's the queen of the Nashville Nights. We came here together, between us one guitar. I became a picker, and she became a star. Well, that's okay, as she did all right. She's the queen of the Nashville Nights. And I got to wondering, baby, if the sun's ever gonna shine. I got to wondering, baby, if you're ever gonna change your mind. I got to wondering, baby, if you could ever be so kind. I got to wondering, baby, if you're ever gonna change your mind. So what's done is done and over. You can't change it anyhow. And if you pardon me, I've got to be whistling Dixie now. Over in the corner, just outside of the queen of the Nashville Nights. And I got to wondering, baby, if the sun's ever gonna shine. I got to wondering, baby, if you're ever gonna change your mind. I got to wondering, baby, if you could ever be so kind. I got to wondering, baby, if you're ever gonna change your mind.
Well, you got married recently.
I did.
Congratulations.
Thanks a million.
Dude.
Thanks.
I mean, it's spun you all around. It's every direction, it sounds like. And is it true? Did you guys get married at the Grand Ole Opry?
We did.
Dude.
Yeah.
How'd you pull that off?
I don't know.
Bron?
Man, you know what? We had got engaged, and we were thinking about the venue where we would want to get married. And I was like, man, it would be so cool to get married, you know, at the Opry. And it was like, that's never going to happen, you know. And we talked about other places, and I played the Grand Ole Opry, and I was there, and I talked to Dan, the manager down there, and I asked him, I was like, hey, I just got engaged. What's the chances of us getting married here? And he's like, oh, you could do it in Studio A. I think that's the name of the Studio A. It's where they filmed Hee Haw. So it's right there at the Opry. I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool, you know. And it's like, maybe I was thinking, maybe if we do it there, we could sneak out on stage and get some pictures on the stage, you know. And he gave me somebody's number to get in touch with to talk over the details. And so we did, and that was the plan for a little while. And we were talking, it's like, man, if we're going to get married at the Opry, I wonder if they would let us get married on the stage. I wonder if it's possible, you know. So we were out there again, and I talked to him again. I was like, what's the chances of us getting married on the stage? And he's like, well, we have like events going at night. He said you could do a sunrise wedding, but we have tours starting at 9:00, so you'd have to be finished by 9 a.m. Maybe we could do this. And I talked to Bronwyn, and she was like, let's do it. You know, it's like all of our friends are going to hate us. You know, all these musicians were asking to come over, and all of our friends and family to be in Nashville and be at the, you know,
it's 6 a.m. call
6
time.
6 a.m. call time for us to get married. And, man, we got married in the circle.
That's fantastic, man.
And man, they were like, "Yeah, we'll do it upright for you guys, man." You know, people talk about you always hear about the Opry family, and I'm not a member of the Grand Ole Opry by no means, but I've played out there a lot with Dell and some other acts, and Bronwyn played with Molly and Daly and Vincent and other people, and we both done our own shows there as well. For them to do this, they went above and beyond, man, for us. And it's really, you really feel like family when somebody treats you this good, you know. And they told us, we'll do everything upright for you, you know. And they let us play. We got married there that morning. We got finished by 9:00, had the reception in Studio A. They let us play the Opry, Bronwyn and I, on our wedding night.
Fantastic.
So we played the show together that night. It was like the end of a fairy tale day, man.
Yeah, man.
It really was. It was really incredible.
What a fantastic lifetime memory.
I'm
You'll
telling
always
you,
have
man.
that.
Yeah.
We were talking about this too before. We had a whole other podcast episode that went unrecorded before we actually stared doing this.
Right.
When you got here. Sad that you folks missed that part. But trying to remember a few bits and pieces. But we were just talking about how, you know, inspiring it is. I'm married to a gal who's a little bit younger than me. I'm not trying to box you into any sort of age group or anything, sir. But it's been so fantastic. It's like a little exhausting now and then, full disclosure, but by and large, just fantastic to have that kind of energy and vitality in your corner, and that restlessness, you know, it's infectious. And I know that you said something about that, you know, when we were talking earlier. And
absolutely.
With Bronwyn, man, I don't think you could find somebody more driven and smart and talented and exciting, you know?
Right.
So, and you mentioned, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm still teeing this up. That, you know, you mentioned that, you know, maybe you wouldn't have started making these, like, as far as songwriting goes.
Yeah.
You might not have started doing it except that she started doing it, and you're like, oh man, this is kind of crazy.
Right.
Like, these songs are getting born.
Yeah. Right.
And how thrilling that was.
Absolutely. I don't think I would have even done a solo record if it wouldn't have been for her. I've wanted to do it for years, and whenever I would think I was about ready to do it, something would happen and I would sidetrack me, and I just never got anything done. And I was wanting to put the record out myself, and while we were dating, she put her first solo record out herself and encouraged me to do the same thing. And we play a lot of music together at home, and constantly bouncing ideas off of each other, you know. So all these tunes, you know, I've had like notebooks full of song ideas, you know, and I would run them by her and we'd jam on them. Same with her record, you know, we would play a lot together and run ideas off of each other. Anyway, it was, she inspired me to do this. And it was the first record that I sang, because my first record was a fiddle record. I sang 2 songs on it, but this one, my last record, I sang all the songs on it. I only had 1 instrumental. And so it featured my singing on there. And I think that was, she encouraged me to do that, and like she finished her record and she told me that, she said, well, the next one that I do, I want to sing everything. So when we were playing music at home, she would start singing tunes and we would work up stuff, and she did her record and it was awesome. I mean, she's a very successful record. Anyway, she said, well, the next one I do, I want to write the songs for. And man, it wasn't long ago she was like, all right, so I'm going to start booking these songwriting sessions, and before the last record, she would, when she said she was going to sing everything on the record, she started taking voice lessons, singing lessons from different people. And man, she's just like so focused, and it's so inspiring to be around, to see somebody work that hard. And then, so with the songwriting, she started booking songwriting sessions and writing with different people around town.
You're like, this girl is serious.
I was like, man, this is why haven't I been doing this?
Totally.
So I can't tell you what I'm going to do next, because I got to wait and see what she does. Oh, but no, it's like that inspired me, and it started with her, like at home, even like coming up with a melody or something together. And she went and wrote with somebody, and she said, all right, you're a co-writer on this. And I was like, nah, I'm not a co-writer on this. But then I was like, well, maybe I should call some of these people and see if they would write with me. And I asked her, and she's like, yeah, of course they will. And I was like, awesome. So
cool.
I called some people, and I started trying to write songs. And
trying to write songs is writing, writing.
It's
that's
so
the
fun.
Same thing.
It's so much fun. Yeah, and I thought, well, if I have one song that I get that I could sing for the rest of my life, it's a success, man. And now I think I have several songs that I want to record. I don't think my next record will be everything that I've written. Time will tell, I guess.
Yeah.
But I will have a couple on there that will be my own songs.
Dude,
first for everything.
I'm so excited. I mean, it's true. You just wrote with Pat McLaughlin this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just like, this is a big part of your life now. And,
man,
it wouldn't have happened.
I hope it stays that way.
I think it probably will.
Yeah.
I think, unless you do something, really mess it up.
Man, honestly, it's all inspired by Bronwyn.
Yeah.
It really is, man.
I love hearing this.
From that to practicing, man, just...
she practices a little bit.
Man, throughout the pandemic, we hung out all the time, her and I. And we would do Zoom lessons, and a lot of times we would work, there could be like 8 lessons, all an hour long. Mm-hmm. She would practice before, and if she was at her house, I would call on our break and be like, you want to come over, have dinner or something later tonight, or what would you like to do? And she's like, well, I'm going to practice. And it's like, you've been working for like 8 hours or all day, and I would be fried, but she had to do something for at least an hour or whatever, practice her own stuff
for herself. Yeah.
And I was like, man,
that is also inspiring.
I better start doing this. Why do I not get my fiddle out and practice?
Yeah.
And since being with her, I play a lot more around the house.
Yeah, man.
And it's incredible. It's all inspired by her. Yeah.
And what's she getting out of the deal?
I don't know.
So it sounds pretty good for you.
I better step it up.
No, that's fantastic. And obviously she's getting something because
I might play some really bad rhythm guitar for her sometime.
Well, we documented some pretty good rhythm guitar playing on an earlier episode, which I submit to the public for appraisal. My dude, I could talk to you all afternoon, and who knows, we're gonna wrap this up, but we'll very likely just keep talking, I imagine. But for the folks at home, man, it's been such a pleasure hearing you talk a little bit about your career and Del. I know that we all love to hear stories about Del, and just to hear, it's he's made an impression on so many lives, bluegrass and not. I'm a casual bluegrass guy, but I just am enamored with him as a sort of larger than life presence. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
and also
man.
just like, it's inspiring to hear, what's going on and in the present and future for you. Like you're doing something. So we'll have to do this again and see what happened.
Yeah. Man, stay tuned. I hope to be recording more. The Travelin McCourys have a new record out that I'm on. I just talked to the guys in the Del McCoury Band. They've been back in the studio with Del, so they're making new records. Christian Ward is the new fiddle player with the Del McCoury Band.
Awesome.
I don't know if you know Christian, but he's an incredible songwriter and player, and it'll be exciting to see his journey.
Yeah, man. We're all on one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just go check out the new music by the Del McCoury Band and the Travelin McCourys.
Keep up the good work, and we'll speak again soon, Jason.
Yeah, man.
Peace.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video, or click here to watch a playlist featuring songs of the Morse Code Podcast. Okay, thank you very much.